My name is Zoe Pemberton. I am 29 years old, and on a Thursday afternoon in February 2024, I dialed a phone number from my desk at the agency I founded, in the office with my name on the glass door. With 9 employees working 30 feet away from me, and I listened to my father answer the phone in his business voice. Warm, confident, completely unprepared. And I said, "Mr. Pemberton, this is Zoe Pemberton calling from Pemberton Digital." 2 seconds of silence. Then, "Zoe?" 7 seconds after that. He asked me if I owned the agency. I said yes. He asked me since when. I said January 2022, and I heard him do the math. I heard the specific quality of silence that belongs to a man who has just located himself on a timeline he did not know existed and found that the distance between where he thought he was and where he actually was is 3 years wide and 9 employees deep and 22 clients long, and has a proper office and seaboard station with the family name on the door in clean white lettering. What my father didn't know was that I had built Pemberton Digital in complete silence over 3 years. Not to hide it from him, not as a statement, not as a strategy, but because on a Sunday afternoon in March 2021, my mother called to tell me my childhood bedroom had been converted into a nursery and offered me a couch as a replacement, and delivered both pieces of information with such cheerful organizational efficiency that I understood in the space of one phone call that my place in the family had been renegotiated without my participation, and the new terms were comfortable and available and not what I needed. This is that story. My parents live in Cary, North Carolina. It is 27 miles from my apartment in Raleigh, and it has always felt like a different kind of world. Quieter, more settled. The specific, comfortable weight of a place where decisions accumulate slowly and people stay. My father, Carl Pemberton, is 57 years old. He has been running Pemberton Hardware and Home on Main Street in Cary since 2004, when he took over from his own father, who opened the store in 1978. The store is 4,200 square feet. It smells like sawdust and rubber, and the particular dry warmth of a space that has been a hardware store for 46 years. It has 7 employees. It has a wooden sign above the door that Carl repainted himself in 2009 with the same burgundy and cream his father used the first time. He is proud of that store in the specific, inarticulate way of a man who has devoted his professional life to something his father built and cannot fully separate his identity from the thing he is protecting. My mother, Diane Pemberton, is 54 years old. She has been teaching first grade at Cary Elementary for 26 years. She is the kind of teacher parents request by name: warm, organized, the specific combination of patience and efficiency that makes 36-year-olds feel simultaneously safe and capable. She manages a classroom the way she manages the family, by maintaining warmth at all times, by processing information quickly and redistributing it clearly, and by moving forward with such consistent forward momentum that the things that have not been properly addressed rarely get the chance to surface until they have grown very large in the silence. My brother Marcus is 31. He is married to a woman named Kelsey who teaches yoga and makes her own candles, and is genuinely kind in the way of people who do not have difficult inner lives. They have a son named Oliver who was born in April 2021. Oliver is the reason for the nursery. Oliver is the reason for everything that followed, in the way that catalysts are reasons, not because they cause the thing directly, but because they reveal the conditions that were already there. Marcus is not a villain in this story. I want to be clear about that before I go further. Marcus texted me on my birthday every year after the incident. Brief, warm, the text of a man who does not know there is anything to repair. He does not know there's anything to repair because from where he was standing, a baby needed a room and a room was available, and his parents made the practical decision and life continued. He is right that a baby needed a room. He is not wrong about the logistics. He is simply located on the other side of the conversation I was not invited to have. And from that side, everything looks like it resolved. The family house on Maple Drive in Cary is a 4-bedroom colonial with a screened porch and a garden my mother tends with the same methodical care she brings to everything. My childhood bedroom was the second on the right at the top of the stairs. Pale yellow walls, a window that looked into the backyard maple. 18 years of accumulated self in a room I had left at 22 when I moved to Raleigh to start freelancing, but had always returned to. On holidays and long weekends, and the occasional Sunday when I needed to be somewhere that knew me before I knew myself. I was 26 years old in March 2021. I had been freelancing for 4 years. I had 6 clients, small businesses, local restaurants, a yoga studio, a boutique in downtown Raleigh, managing their social media, writing their captions, building their online presence one post at a time with the specific patient attention that would later become the foundation of an agency. I was making approximately $38,000 a year. I had been building towards something larger for 2 years with the methodical patience of a person who knows exactly where she is going and is not in a hurry to announce it before she gets there. On a Sunday afternoon in March 2021, my mother called. Her voice was warm, organized, the voice she uses when she is delivering information she has already processed and expects the recipient to process equally quickly, in the way she has been processing information and redistributing it to first graders for 26 years. She said, "I wanted to let you know we've converted your old room into a nursery for Oliver. We did it last weekend. It looks so sweet, Zoe, you should see it. We kept your boxes in the garage, all labeled. And of course you're always welcome to stay on the couch when you visit. It's very comfortable. Your father falls asleep on it all the time." She said it as if she were describing a minor administrative update, a room reassignment, a practical solution to a spatial problem. She said it with genuine warmth and zero awareness that what she was describing was the erasure of my physical presence in the family home, delivered as a logistical footnote. I said, "Okay, Mom." I did not say anything else in that call that I can still account for. I finished the call. I put my phone down on the kitchen counter. I stood in my apartment in Raleigh and I thought about the boxes in the garage, all labeled, with the specific clinical efficiency of a woman who has managed 36-year-olds every September and finds the management of adult family members comparatively straightforward. I thought about the couch that was very comfortable. I thought about the word always, in your always welcome, and how always is a word that means something different when it is the only welcome available. 2 days later, I called my father back. My voice was controlled. My question was direct. Had I been consulted before the decision was made? He said, "Zoe, you don't live here. You haven't lived here in 4 years." The room was sitting empty. Marcus and Kelsey needed a nursery. It was a practical decision. Said with the specific authority of a man who has been making practical decisions about the family business and the family home for 20 years and has never had his practical decisions questioned, not once, by anyone who lived under his roof. I was not under his roof. That was apparently the point. 3 weeks later, my mother sent a text, "Zoe, sweetheart, we miss you. The couch really is very comfortable. Come visit soon." I read it on a Tuesday morning before my first client call. I screenshot it. I did not reply. I added it to a notes file I had been keeping since the Sunday afternoon phone call in the same methodical way I keep everything, accurately, without drama, in case it is ever needed. Thanksgiving 2021, I sent a card instead of coming. That evening my father texted me, "You were missed today. Hope everything is okay." The couch is always here. He meant it kindly. He sent it without understanding that the couch is always here was the problem. "The couch is always here" was the sentence that told me my place in the family had been renegotiated without my participation, and the new terms were a couch and an always welcome that nobody had made. Conditional, and therefore nobody could make unconditional. I read the text. I put my phone down. I went back to the client proposal I was writing. I was always working on something. I did not announce the no contact. I simply became gradually, quietly unavailable. I stopped answering calls on the first ring and then on the second, and then not at all for stretches of days. I sent texts in reply to texts, brief, warm, completely impenetrable. I sent the Christmas card. I responded to birthday texts with thank you. I maintained the appearance of a daughter who was busy and fine and occasionally in touch. Because I was busy and fine and occasionally in touch. And because I am not a woman who performs absence dramatically, I simply redirected my presence toward the thing I was building and let the building be the whole of my available attention. In January 2022, I founded Pemberton Digital. I want to tell you that founding it felt momentous. It did not. It felt like the next thing on the list. I had saved $22,000 from 4 years of freelancing. I had a client list of 8 small businesses I had been managing on a freelance basis. I had found a one-room office above a coffee shop on Fayetteville Street that I was going to share for the first 6 months with a freelance photographer named Jonah Park to split the rent. I had a business bank account, a registered LLC, a logo I had designed myself in an evening, and a name I had chosen without deliberation. Pemberton Digital. My own surname. I chose it because it was available and it was mine, and I was not going to use a name that required explanation. I did not choose it as a statement. I did not choose it as a flag. I chose it the way I choose most things, practically, accurately, without more ceremony than the decision deserved. I did not tell my parents I had founded an agency. I did not tell them I had employees or clients or a lease or a team. I answered their occasional questions about work with the word fine and changed the subject. I was good at this. I'd been good at this since March 2021 because fine is a word that closes conversations without lying. And I had enough open conversations running simultaneously in the form of a growing agency that I did not have bandwidth for conversations that would require more than I was willing to give. The first year was precise and difficult. By June 2022, I had hired my first employee, a content strategist named Priya, who had been freelancing out of her apartment for 2 years and came to me through a mutual contact and has been with the agency ever since. By September, I had hired a second. By the end of 2022, Pemberton Digital had 14 clients and $520,000 in annual recurring revenue. Not a fortune. Not yet, but a foundation built entirely on referrals from clients whose numbers were moving in the right direction and who told other business owners what they were seeing. There were hard months. I want to be honest about that. In October 2022, a client who had been with me since the freelance days, a restaurant group with 3 locations, our largest account, called to say they were moving their marketing in-house. They had been 12% of my monthly revenue. I sat with that for exactly 1 evening. Then I rebuilt the pipeline. I spent 3 weeks calling every former contact, every referral source, every business owner I had ever had a coffee with. By the end of November, I had replaced the lost revenue with 2 new clients, one of whom brought a second referral in January. The pipeline is a muscle. You build it by using it, and by the time you need it urgently, you need it to already be strong. By the end of 2023, 2 years after I had driven back to Raleigh with the boxes and the couch and the practical decision sitting in my chest, like something I had swallowed and not yet processed, Pemberton Digital had 22 clients, 9 employees, and $1.4 million in annual recurring revenue. In September 2023, we moved out of Fayetteville Street and into a 2,400 square foot office in the Seaboard Station development. A proper office with a conference room and a kitchen and 7 workstations and a glass-fronted entrance with the agency name on the door in clean, white lettering. I stood in front of that door on the first morning, and I read my own name on the glass, and I felt something I do not have a precise word for, not triumph, not relief exactly, but the specific satisfaction of a person who made a list with 11 items and has been working down it for 2 years and can see the shape of the thing they were building. I did not post about it on my personal social media. I posted it on the agency Instagram. It had 847 likes. My parents do not follow the agency Instagram. They had no reason to. They did not know it existed. They knew Zoe was fine. They knew she was busy. The family group chat moved around me like water around a stone, messages about Oliver's first steps and Marcus's renovation and Carl's new truck and Diane's book club. A stream of family life in which I appeared occasionally as a name in a birthday message and otherwise not at all. I was not bitter about this. I was occupied. The agency was growing. I had 9 people who depended on the decisions I made from my desk every morning, and that responsibility was the most clarifying thing I had ever held in my hands. Meanwhile, on Main Street in Cary, Pemberton Hardware and Home was struggling. If you're still with me on this one, drop a comment below and tell me if you've ever built something in silence while the people who should have been watching were looking elsewhere. I read every single comment, and I want to know how long you carried it alone. Carl had known since 2019 that the business needed a digital presence. He had resisted the solution with the specific stubbornness of a man who built a relationship with his community through physical presence and personal knowledge across 20 years and genuinely did not understand why the internet should be necessary for a business that had survived for 46 years without it. Foot traffic declining, he attributed to seasonal variation. Online competitors capturing his market share, he attributed to customers who did not value local relationships. When a competitor opened an online store in early 2023 and within 6 months had absorbed 23% of the category that was Pemberton Hardware's strongest seller, Carl attributed it to a temporary disruption. In 2023, Pemberton Hardware's revenue dropped $180,000 in a single calendar year. That is not a temporary disruption. That is a business that has reached the specific moment of decision where either it adapts or it accepts the trajectory. Carl asked around. Business owners he trusted told him to get a digital marketing agency, not a freelancer, not a one-person operation, but a proper agency with a team and a track record and measurable results. He asked his accountant. His accountant searched for top-rated digital marketing agencies in Wake County, cross-referenced with client referrals, and came back with 3 names. The third name on the list was Pemberton Digital. His accountant did not know me. He found the agency through a Google search and a referral from another client who had used Pemberton Digital for 8 months and told him the numbers were moving. He gave Carl the name and the main office number. Carl called on a Tuesday afternoon in February 2024. My office manager, Rosa Gutierrez, answered. Rosa has been with the agency since month 4. She handles all initial inquiries with a warmth and precision that I deeply admire and have relied on since the beginning. She took Carl's name, his business description, and scheduled a discovery call for Thursday at 2 o'clock. She sent me the intake form. I was reviewing the week's scheduled calls at my desk on Tuesday evening when I opened the intake form at 7:43. I read the business name, Pemberton Hardware and Home. I read the owner's name, Carl Pemberton. I read the address, 847 Main Street, Cary, NC. I sat with the intake form for 4 minutes and 31 seconds. Then I called my best friend Iris, who has known everything since March 2021. The couch, the call, the no contact, the agency, every milestone, every difficult October. Every morning, I stood in front of the Fayetteville Street door, and then later the Seaboard Station door, and understood that the thing I was building was real and mine and had been built entirely in the specific productive silence of a person with no audience. I said, "You are not going to believe who just booked a discovery call." She said, "Tell me." I told her. Iris was quiet for 3 seconds. Then she said, "Are you going to take the call?" I said, "I need to think about it." I thought about it for the rest of Tuesday evening and all of Wednesday. I thought about what it would mean to take the call and what it would mean to pass it to someone else, and whether either of those things changed what had happened and what had been built in the time since. I thought about Pemberton Hardware and the 7 employees Carl was trying to protect and the 46-year history of a business his father started and that my grandmother had named. I thought about my grandmother giving that business the family name because she believed the family was the reason. I thought about the fact that I had given my agency the same name for a reason that had nothing to do with sentiment and everything to do with ownership. It was mine, it was available, it was accurate, and about how the 2 uses of the name existed on opposite ends of the same thread. On Wednesday night, I made my decision. I sent Rosa a message, "I'll handle Thursdays 2 o'clock personally." She said, "Okay." She updated the calendar. Thursday, February 22nd, 2024, 2:02 in the afternoon. I was at my desk in the Seaboard Station office. The agency name was visible through the glass entrance in white lettering, My 9 employees were at their workstations. The conference room behind me had the Pemberton Digital logo on the glass partition. I had a cup of tea that was still hot. I dialed the number on the intake form. Carl answered on the second ring. He was in his office at Pemberton Hardware, the same office his father built in 1978, the wooden desk he had been sitting behind since 2004, the comfortable, settled disorder of a man who has been in one place for 20 years. He answered with the voice he uses for business calls. Warm, direct, the voice of a man who trusts his own instincts. Carl Pemberton. I said, Mr. Pemberton, this is Zoe Pemberton calling from Pemberton Digital. I understand you're interested in discussing digital marketing support for Pemberton Hardware and Home. I said it the way I say everything at work, cleanly, professionally, with the specific warmth I bring to every discovery call because I genuinely like talking to business owners about their problems, and I am good at it. 2 seconds of silence. Then Zoe? The business call voice was gone, just like that, gone, replaced by the kitchen table voice, the Sunday afternoon voice, the voice of a man who has just heard his daughter's name come out of a business call he was not prepared for. I said, yes. Another silence, shorter but denser. 5 seconds. I counted every one. He said, You own this agency? Yes. Pemberton Digital. Yes. Since when? January 2022. I heard him do the calculation. January 2022 is 10 months after the nursery. He may or may not have done that particular calculation in that particular moment, but I heard him doing some version of it. The silence of a man locating himself on a timeline he did not know existed. He said, How many? Is it just you? 9 employees, 22 clients. We've been in our current office since September. I paused. It's a good team. Another silence. Longer this time. Carl Pemberton has been running a family business for 20 years, and he understands what 9 employees and 22 clients and a proper office means. He understands it in the language of payroll and lease agreements and client retention, and all the specific invisible work that goes into being the person responsible for all of those things. Simultaneously, he sat in the office his father built and held the phone and listened to his daughter describe an agency she had built in 3 years that by the metrics he understood was more professionally established than the business he had been running for 20. He said, Why didn't you tell us? I looked at the agency name on the glass entrance. I looked at the 9 people at the workstations outside my office door. I thought about the nursery and the couch and the practical decision and the "You're always welcome," delivered with the warmth of a woman who had never considered that warmth is not a substitute for consultation. I said, You didn't ask, Dad. Evenly. Accurately. Without inflection, I couldn't back up. Nobody asked about my work in 3 years, not once. Not what I was building, not how it was going, not whether I needed anything. A pause. I was busy. I built something. Nobody asked. The silence that followed was the longest one in the call. 11 seconds. I counted every one of them. He said, I want to hear about it. He said it the way you say something when you mean it, not as a deflection, not as the management of a difficult moment, but as a genuine statement from a man who has just understood something he cannot ununderstand and is trying to locate the appropriate response. He said it again, slightly differently. I want to hear about what you built. I said, Then let's start with your business. Tell me about the decline. I opened my intake form. I picked up my pen. I ran the discovery call the way I run every discovery call, with focused attention, with the right questions, with the specific engaged listening that is the foundation of every good proposal I have ever written. He told me about the online competitor, about the $180,000 revenue drop, about the 7 employees he was trying to protect, and the 46-year history of a business he did not want to lose. He told me all of it. I wrote notes. I was thorough. I was fair. I was genuinely interested because I am always genuinely interested in the problem, and the problem here was real and I could help with it. The call ran 44 minutes, 17 minutes longer than standard. At the end, I said, I'm going to put together a proposal. I'll have it to you by Monday." He said, "Thank you." He paused. Then he said, "Zoe." I waited. He said, "Your grandmother named this business. Did you know that? Pemberton Hardware. She said it should have the family name because the family was the reason." Another pause. "I think she'd have something to say about Pemberton Digital." I looked at the agency name on the glass door. I said, "I think she'd say it figures." Said the way you say something when you mean it completely and do not need to explain it. He said yes, quietly. That's exactly what she'd say. I hung up. I sat at my desk for 3 minutes. Then I called Iris. She picked up on the first ring and said, "How did it go?" I said, "I'm writing them a proposal." She said, "Of course you are." I said, "He said Grandma would have something to say about Pemberton Digital." A pause. Then Iris said, "What did you say?" I said she'd say it figures." Iris was quiet for 4 seconds. Then she said, "Zoe." I said, "I know." I meant it. I knew. That evening I called my mother. Diane picked up on the first ring. She always picks up on the first ring for me. She has always picked up. The phone has never been the barrier. The barrier was never the phone. I said, "I talked to Dad today." She said, "I know. He called me right after." Her voice was different from the Sunday afternoon voice of March 2021. Something had shifted in it, not dramatically, not with the formal weight of a reckoning, but with the specific quietness of a woman who has been cheerfully managing something for 3 years and has just been told by her husband that the thing she was managing had 9 employees and 22 clients and a proper office in Seaboard Station, and she had not known, had not asked, had not once in 3 years of birthday texts and baked goods packages and cheerful check-in calls thought to ask what Zoe was building or whether she was more than fine. She said, "Why didn't you tell us?" I said, "Why didn't you ask?" Gently, not as an attack, as a question that had a real answer, and I wanted the real answer. And I had waited 3 years for the space to ask it with enough silence around it that the answer could actually land. Diane was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I thought you were fine." I said, "I was fine, Mom. I was more than fine. But fine isn't the same as okay, and nobody asked about the difference." She did not respond immediately. I let the silence sit. I have learned to let silence sit. I have been practicing it for 3 years. In discovery calls and client meetings and the specific quiet of a Seaboard Station office at 7 in the morning when I am the first person there and the city is just beginning to move outside the window and everything I have built is visible from where I am sitting. Diane said, "I see that now." She said it the way a first-grade teacher says something when she means it for keeps, slowly, clearly, making sure it lands. "I see that now, Zoe." I said, "I know you do." I meant that too. I did not say, and the couch was never the point. I did not need to. She was already there. The proposal went to Carl on Monday morning. It covered a 12-month digital transformation strategy, a rebuilt website with full e-commerce capability, a social media presence across 3 platforms, a Google Business Profile optimization, a monthly content calendar, and a local SEO strategy targeting the Cary and surrounding area hardware and home improvement market. The projected revenue recovery was $140,000 in year 1, assuming the strategy was executed consistently. Carl reviewed it Monday afternoon. He called Rosa to schedule a follow-up. Rosa scheduled it for Wednesday. On Wednesday, Carl accepted the proposal. He signed the contract. Pemberton Hardware and Home became Pemberton Digital's 23rd client. My office manager processed the paperwork. In the client name field it said, Pemberton Hardware and Home. In the account manager field it said, Z. Pemberton. I assigned myself. Of course I did. The weeks after the call were not dramatic. They did not need to be. My father did not call with a speech, and my mother did not arrive at my office with flowers, and my brother did not text a formal acknowledgement of 3 years of accumulated distance. Life does not resolve in speeches. It resolves in the accumulation of smaller adjustments. A Sunday call that is slightly longer than it used to be. A question about the agency that is asked and answered honestly. A family group chat message that stops moving around me and begins, occasionally, to include me. Diane started asking about the business. Real questions. Not how are you fine questions, but what is the agency working on? How is the Pemberton hardware project going? Did you hire someone for the new account? She asked them in the specific, organized way of a woman who has been processing information and asking follow-up questions for 26 years and has simply, finally, turned the skill in the right direction. I answered them. I was honest. I told her about the difficult October in 2022 and the pipeline rebuild. I told her about Priya and Rosa and the team I had built. I told her about Fayetteville Street and the mornings I was in the office before anyone else arrived. She listened in a way she had not listened to me in 3 years, not because she was incapable of it, but because she had never understood until a discovery call that there was something specific and real to listen to. My father texted me the week after he signed the contract. The text said, "The new website is going up next week. Rosa said it'll be ready Thursday." I keep walking by the store and trying to picture it. Then, "Thank you for the proposal. It's a good plan." Then, after a pause long enough that I could tell it was a separate thought, "I'm sorry we didn't ask." I read the text 3 times. Then I replied, "Let me know what you think of the website Thursday." I sent it. Then a moment later, I sent a second message. "It's a good store, Dad. 46 years is something. Let's protect it." He sent back one word, "Yes." That was enough. It was more than enough. It was. In the specific vocabulary of a family that communicates in practical decisions and logistical updates, and the occasional single word carrying the weight of everything that was not said before it, exactly what needed to be said. My parents gave my childhood bedroom to a baby and gave me a couch and called both of those things practical. They were right about the bedroom, and they were not wrong about the couch. What they did not account for was the daughter. The specific person who lived in that bedroom for 18 years, and who, upon being offered accommodation as a replacement for presents, went to her apartment in Raleigh and opened a laptop and made a list with 11 items and worked her way down it for 3 years in the specific, productive silence of a person who has decided that the version of herself who kept showing up to be accommodated was no longer available. I built Pemberton Digital in that silence. 9 employees, 22 clients, a Seaboard Station office with the family name on the door in clean white lettering. A revenue figure that my father will tell his accountant about next quarter, with a quiet pride I will never hear directly, but do not need to. I did not build it to be found. I did not build it to be discovered. I built it because I was exceptionally good at what I do. And building it was the only thing that made sense after an afternoon when I understood that a couch is not the same as a room, and accommodation is not the same as belonging. When my father called Pemberton Digital in February 2024, he called a company with his own family name on it and heard his daughter's voice, and the name had been in the Wake County Business Registry for 2 years, and nobody in the family had known. That is the whole story in one detail. The name was there the entire time. Nobody looked. I am not angry about the years. I was busy during the years. The years produced something. Anger would have produced nothing except the specific exhaustion of carrying a grievance in a direction that was not forward, and I do not have the bandwidth for directions that are not forward. What I have instead is a contract filed under Pemberton Hardware and Home, an account manager field that says Z, Pemberton, and a father who texted me last Tuesday because the website traffic numbers came in from the first month, and they were significantly better than projected, and he wanted me to know. I told him I was glad. I told him Rosa would schedule a 30-day check-in this week, and we would go over the data together. He said, "Good." Then he said, "Zoe." I said, "I know, Dad, and I do know. I have always known. Knowing was never the hard part. The hard part was building something large enough that the knowing could finally be said out loud." So here is my question for you, and I want you to think about it before you answer, because I think it is the thing this whole story is actually about, underneath the agency and the discovery call and the 11 seconds of silence on a Thursday afternoon in February. Has someone ever made a practical decision about your place in the family and called it done? And how long did it take for them to understand what they had actually decided? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one.